Coming up, the Bulls' win streak continues, and the Pistons knock off the defending champs in Milwaukee. This is Locked On Now NBA.
The biggest games, the best performances, expert analysis. You are Locked On Now.
Welcome in. You're listening to Locked On Now NBA, local experts on the biggest stories on the hardwood. I'm your host, Kainani Stevens. Thank you for making Locked On Now your first listen every single weekday. Our Locked On NBA hosts are here to break everything down for you from a packed night of games on Monday. We're going to start out in Chicago, where the Bulls narrowly held off a good fight from the Magic in our biggest game.
The biggest game.
The Bulls hold the title of the best record in the Eastern Conference, but Chicago really had to work for it on Monday night to beat the Magic. Locked On Bulls tells us how Chicago got the win, and Locked On Magic breaks down a good effort from their team and why fans should still be pleased.
What's up, Bulls Nation? Matt Peck here from Locked On Bulls with your post-game takeaway. Well, the Bulls streak lives, and sometimes you just got to win the ugly ones. The Bulls beat the Orlando Magic at home. 102-98 was the final. The Bulls surviving a slow start that included 0 of 8 from behind the three-point line out of the gate. Come back and win an unnecessarily tight one against Orlando. And credit to the Magic, who were playing the second night of a back-to-back after a brutal OT loss to the Celtics last night. The Bulls, look, they did not have a great night. They looked sluggish. Nobody really had their shot going, but DeMar DeRozan and Zach LaVine, that dynamic duo, 29 for DeRozan, 27 for LaVine. They each had some big buckets and sank some free throws down the stretch of this close fourth quarter, and that was just enough for the Bulls to get their 8th straight win. And credit to Kobe White, who chipped in 17 points off the bench, continuing his recent string of strong performances. The Bulls now, with losses by Brooklyn and Milwaukee tonight, have a 2-game lead atop the Eastern Conference. They get a few days off before a rematch against the Washington Wizards on Friday. Of course, the Bulls beating the Wizards New Year's Day with one of those awesome DeMar buzzer beaters. For a complete breakdown of this Bulls win over the Magic, check out tomorrow's episode of Locked On Bulls with me and my guy Big Dave, wherever you get your podcasts. Locked On Bulls, your team every day.
This is Philip Rossman-Reich, the host of Locked On Magic, and the Orlando Magic had every excuse to pack it in against the Chicago Bulls on Monday night. They were coming off a tough back-to-back in Boston. They had a really bad loss against the Celtics in overtime where they lost a 14-point lead with 4.5 minutes to go. They were playing the best team in the Eastern Conference, at least by record. They had every reason to look forward to coming home, playing the Philadelphia 76ers on Wednesday, and licking their wounds when they got back to Orlando. But I said after Sunday's game that I was curious how the team would respond. I was just curious to see if that was the kind of loss that would splinter them or draw them together, something that would motivate them to play harder and better. It was the latter. The Magic played fantastic basketball for much of the evening, really staying with and keeping up with the Chicago Bulls. They took an early lead. They were the aggressors early on, and really the game changed when the bench unit came in, which the Magic just don't have any depth right now. Still relying very heavily on guys that they brought in because of all the COVID protocols and because of all the COVID absences that this team has had. The Magic continued to play hard. They continued to play defense. They kept themselves in the game, and sure, there were some missed shots that could have gone their way that would have enabled them to come over and take this game, but they were chasing the lead when they probably should have been playing from ahead with the way that they played early on in the game. All credit to the Chicago Bulls. DeMar DeRozan, Zach LaVine finished the game off. They are true gamers. They're true all-star players. The Magic are still waiting for a couple of their big players to come back from injury, but the Magic fight hard, and especially coming off a loss like Sunday night's, that's all you can ask for. We'll have more coming up on Locked On Magic later on. Until then, this is Philip Rossman-Reich.
The Memphis Grizzlies and Ja Morant continue to perform against the best teams in the league. That was no different on Monday night when they took down the Nets in Brooklyn. Locked On Grizzlies recaps another statement win.
Ja Morant and Desmond Bane at this point may truly be a top 5 backcourt in the NBA. Sean Coleman here with the Locked On Grizzlies podcast. For the second straight Monday, Ja Morant and Desmond Bane combine for 65 points in order to take down one of the most legitimate title contenders in the NBA on the road. Tonight, outdueling the duo of Kevin Durant and James Harden for the first 3 quarters for the Grizzlies to get a big lead. Ja Morant, 35 points of his own. Desmond Bane, 29 points. Ja Morant coming off the NBA's Player of the Week last week and starting off a campaign with the Grizzlies having 5 games this week to win back-to-back Player of the Week awards. But don't let it go without being recognized when it comes to the efforts of Santi Aldama, Killian Tilly in the time that he was on the court, Jarrett Culver, once again, Tyus Jones and Brandon Clark combining for 30 points on the night to make sure that the Grizzlies bench were also able to win the non-starter minutes. The Grizzlies are truly showing that not only can they compete against anybody in the NBA, they also can go in and wreak havoc, even if they don't have their full roster at their disposal to be able to win games. Now having beat the Suns, the Warriors, the Jazz, and the Nets all on the road this season. We'll have this and much more celebrating another big Grizzlies victory on the postgame edition of the Locked On Grizzlies podcast.
The Nets dropped their 3rd straight, didn't look good in the loss on Monday night, but help may be on the way. Locked On Nets has more.
All right, Doug Norrie, Locked On Nets here, coming at you after a disappointing loss for the Brooklyn Nets at home, making it their 3rd in a row, dropping to the Grizzlies 118-104. Rookies at the end almost staging a pretty epic comeback, closing the gap to right around 10 in the 4th quarter. Weren't able to ultimately pull through with that. Kevin Durant and James Harden looked off all night. They got absolutely crushed on the offensive boards. It was really just sort of a dismantling when it came to the starters for the Nets. Again, they lose their 3rd in a row. We're going to be talking about this game, some changes that Nash and company can make, what to expect with Kyrie Irving coming back. It's all going to be on the Locked On Nets podcast.
The Utah Jazz hit the road and got a big night out of Donovan Mitchell and a big win over New Orleans. As our Locked On Jazz host details, Mitchell did his homework, made sure he was prepared to dominate on Monday.
The Utah Jazz win their 9th straight on the road in New Orleans, 115-104 over the Pelicans. And the underneath story was a veteran taking a rook to school. David Locke of Locked On Jazz here. The Jazz continue to play brilliant road basketball. They're in control most of the way against the Pelicans and win it 115-104. Their big guys all played very well. 22 from Mike Conley, 21 from Bojan Bogdanovic. Rudy Gobert has 14 straight double-double. But the story is Donovan Mitchell, who in 2 games against the Pelicans was just 3 of 14 against Herb Jones. Donovan is known as one of the best film watchers in the league. He must have taken to the film study because the rookie had a tough night tonight as Donovan Mitchell went 7 of 10 when guarded by Jones on his way to 29 points and scoring 12 in the 4th quarter as the Jazz win it in New Orleans. Jazz playing the first of a 5-game trip. If you want more on the Jazz, go to Locked On Jazz.
Brandon Ingram returned to the court for the Pelicans, but that was about all of the positives for New Orleans as they lost to the Jazz. Locked On Pelicans recaps Ingram's return and what else the other parts of the roster need to work on going forward.
Pelicans never give up, but ultimately can't keep up with the Utah Jazz. I'm Jake Madison, host of the Locked On Pelicans podcast and Locked On NBA. Despite getting Brandon Ingram back and Jonas Valanciunas, the Pelicans fall 115-104 to the Jazz. B.I. was clearly still hampered by his Achilles soreness and was rusty in his return. He shot a terrible 3 for 18 from the field. And when that happens to your star player, you're just not going to win against the best offensive team in the league. Look, credit the Pelicans for playing hard for first-year head coach Willie Green and never giving up in this game despite being down by multiple times, double digits. But it's clear they lack something like, I don't know, a 3rd-year big man who scores at a historic rate at the rim. Names sound something like Zion Williamson. Without him, this team can beat some of the bottom feeders in the league, but will struggle against the best. I'll have more on this game and when Zion may return over at the Locked On Pelicans podcast.
Coming up, the champs fall to one of the worst teams in the league. This is Locked On Now NBA. This edition of Locked On Now is brought to you by Built Bar. Now that we're in the new year, along comes New Year's resolutions. If you're trying to get fit this year, Built Bar can help you get there. It's the best tasting protein bar out there, low calorie, low carb, low fat, low sugar, but high in protein, and they taste great because they're made with 100% real chocolate. And they come in tons of different flavors. They change them every couple of days as well, so you won't get sick of them as this goes along. So head over to built.com, use promo code LOCKED15. You'll get 15% off your order. Again, that promo code is LOCKED15 for 15% off your order at built.com. You're listening to Locked On Now NBA. I'm Kainani Stevens. Thanks for making Locked On Now your first listen every weekday. Saddiq Bey had a career night for Detroit, and it was our best performance.
The best performance.
Hold up.
Bey led the charge for Detroit, but it was a full team effort as they took down Milwaukee for the first time since 2018. Locked On Pistons has more on the big win.
Before we even start the recap, you guys got to tell me, how many of you guys lost money because you guys bet against the Pistons tonight? I know there's a lot of you guys that over and try to lie. I can't blame you. Bet against your favorite team, I get, but can't blame you. Host of the Locked On Pistons podcast, Kukil here. The Pistons pull up the biggest upset maybe of the season, defeating the Milwaukee Bucks, the defending champions, 115-106. Saddiq Bey goes off for 34 points in the return of Killian Hayes, Kay Cunningham, Trey Lyles, Josh Jackson. All those guys returned, didn't mean anything. Saddiq still went off, 34 points, led the Pistons in scoring. He was 8 of 13 from deep, 12 of 22 from the field. Kay Cunningham came back and had a good game as well, had 19 points and 7 assists, including somewhat of a dagger 3 over Giannis Antetokounmpo towards the end of the game. He had a really nice game. And also Josh Jackson came off the bench with 24 points. This man hasn't played in a while. He's been out the rotation, but came in with 24 points tonight, 9-13 shooting. The Pistons had a great game tonight. It was a fun game to watch. A 2-game winning streak for this Pistons squad. Can't believe I'm saying that, and especially with the win over the Milwaukee Bucks, man. It was crazy. We'll talk about that all on tomorrow's episode of the Locked On Pistons podcast.
Trae Young was the best of the individual performances on Monday. He dropped 56 points, but it was in a losing effort against Portland. Locked On Hawks tries to figure out how Atlanta squandered away a huge night from its star.
Hello friends, my name is Brad Rowland. The Atlanta Hawks go on the road to Portland on this Monday evening and go down at the hands of the Blazers by a final score of 136-131, a high-scoring affair. Defense optional, as they might say, on both sides of the ball. Honestly, the Hawks were not good defensively, to say the least, in this game. That was why they lost this contest. They were pretty much abysmal on defense the entire way. From start to finish, honestly, perimeter defense was a problem throughout. Portland was pretty hot as a three-point shooting team in this game, if you want to give some credit to the Blazers, but the Hawks defense was very bad on the perimeter all night long. Offensively, the big story for the Hawks was Trae Young and a career-high 56 points. He was masterful offensively in this game, 14 assists as well. The second player in NBA history to go for at least 50 and 14 in a losing effort. Not his fault. Obviously, he carried the offense. The offense was awesome throughout the night for the Hawks. Just wasn't quite enough as they couldn't get stops. And what kind of swung the game, at least at the end, was the Hawks had this. There were one dry spell of the night offensively, had at the beginning of the fourth quarter with Trae off the floor, and that ended up sinking them in this contest. So we'll have a full breakdown, but the long story short of this one is that the Hawks could not get stops. Offense was great. Trae Young was great, but defensively, it's been a long season and an even longer night for the Hawks. We'll have full coverage on the Locked On Hawks podcast.
The Trailblazers countered Trae Young's big night with a 43-point game from Anthony Simons. He and the rest of the Blazers scored at least 30 points in every single quarter. Locked On Blazers tells you how Portland found the bottom of the net so easily against the Hawks.
Anthony Simons becomes the youngest player in Blazers franchise history to score 40 points with a 43.7 assist night in a huge Blazers win, 136-131 over the Hawks. Blazers had a 4-game losing streak coming into this one and lost 9 of 10. They're without C.J. McCollum, without Damian Lillard, but Yusuf Nurkic, Robert Covington returned to the lineup, and Anthony Simons goes nuts for 43, and the Blazers hold off 56 from Trae Young to get a much-needed win and stop the skid. Simons was as special as you would expect, and the Blazers needed every bit of it because they could not slow down the Hawks on the other end. This game was defense optional, and the Blazers offense won them the game behind Simons. Make sure you listen to Locked On Blazers for more.
Anthony Edwards continues to rise up to the challenge. He led the Timberwolves with 28 points last night in LA against the Clippers, and he did so without some big star power on his team to back him up. Locked On Timberwolves fills us in.
Ben Beacon with Locked On Wolves here. The Timberwolves won, snapping a 3-game losing streak, beating the LA Clippers on Monday night in LA by 18 points. The Timberwolves rode a big second quarter to the win. This was a really sloppy game. LA had a whopping 20 turnovers in this game, and it felt like there were at least, I don't know, it felt like twice that. So many of them were unforced errors. The Timberwolves were okay defensively, but this was more just a miserable offensive game from the Clippers. The Wolves did enough to deserve to win this thing, but the Clippers did everything they could to give it to Minnesota as well. Jaden McDaniels was arguably the best player on the floor for Minnesota. We haven't been able to say that very often, even with Karl-Anthony Towns and D'Angelo Russell out for the better part of the last couple of weeks. But Jaden had 18 points and 10 shots off the bench. Anthony Edwards came on strong late in the game as the Wolves pulled away. And the Timberwolves had yet another game where they were a big plus on the glass and in the paint, which isn't something we've said a lot this year either. But this was a good all-around win for the Timberwolves. They get to go back home and hopefully get Towns and Russell back later this week. More upcoming on the postgame pod here tonight still on Tuesday's show. So make sure you subscribe to Locked On Wolves.
That's going to do it for us. Thank you for making Locked On Now your first listen every day. For more on the association and your team, make sure you check out Locked On NBA and your team's Locked On podcast. I'm Kainani Stevens. This has been Locked On Now.